Welcome to Rock Talks. Today we're talking to Nige Rockett, founder and guitar player of the band Onslaught. We discuss the thrash metal scene in the UK during the 80s, their masterpiece The Force, the leaving of their legendary singer Keeler, their upcoming new studio album, and more. Hello Nige, welcome to Rock Talks. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey Pierre, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. So let's do this. Let's talk about the history of Onslaught.
Cool.
Let's go way back to the mid 80s, around the Force era. You know, the Force is not one of the best albums for Onslaught, but also for the whole thrash metal genre around the world, right? So what can you tell me about the writing process of this thrash metal masterpiece?
Um, it was such a long time ago. The memories aren't too clear, but I remember it being a very easy album to write. I think we not long released Power from Hell, and we were very naive musicians at the time. We were still learning a lot about songwriting and playing our instruments, and we'd improved. We'd worked very hard after the Power from Hell release, and things went really quickly. We'd learned a lot of new ideas musically, how to play and stuff, and it just made things really easy to write that record. We had lots of fresh ideas, and it came so quickly. I think we'd probably written that album within 6 months after Power from Hell. So it was a very fast process between those two albums, which is kind of unusual for Onslaught. But
Yeah.
it was, and with Cy coming in the band at that time as well, it made things even easier because we had such a great vocalist to work with, and it gave us another dimension.
Yeah, because the Force is like an improved version of Onslaught compared to what was Power from Hell, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the changes within the lineup with adding the second guitars with Jace moving over to guitar and Mo playing bass and Cy coming into the band, it was a completely fresh outlook on the material, and it gave us a lot more scope to do different things with the two guitarists, and obviously the influence of Cy's voice was a great addition to the band as well. So it was a very inspirational time, I think, for us writing music, and everybody was really excited after the success of Power from Hell, and then with Cy coming in, it was a whole new level. So everything just felt amazing, and we were really inspired at that time.
Yeah, everything falls right into place, like they say.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was a really, really good period.
Thrash metal is I mean, the beginning of thrash metal, a lot of people contribute to the Bay Area, the California Bay Area from the United States. No, also they talk about New York because of bands like Anthrax, Overkill, and a lot of people also like to talk about the German thrash metal bands, right? But very few people actually talk or know anything about the thrash metal band from the UK back in the 80s. So what can you tell me about the thrash metal scene of England back in that period of time?
I guess when you mention all those bands and stuff like that, what people have to realize is where thrash metal came from. They say the Bay Area, New York, Germany. Hang on, just remember two bands, Discharge and Motorhead. And that's where thrash metal came from, really, if you look at it,
Exactly.
and Venom as well.
Yeah.
So it is really very much UK based in its origins, I think. Where the Bay Area also obviously took it to the next level. But yeah, I mean, it's predominantly came from the UK, and obviously we were probably one of the first bands in the UK to be a real full-on thrash band. But the scene for fans was amazing, but there weren't so many great bands, which was kind of strange. I don't understand why. There was still a lot of punk bands going around at the time, but not really a great deal of thrash metal bands until, I guess, 1986, I would imagine, in the UK. So it wasn't great for bands, but the fans, there were so many thrash metal fans, you know. So it was
So
kind of
it was
strange.
like a very small scene, thrash metal.
For bands, but for fans, when the American bands came over or whatever, huge crowds, you know. But not many UK bands. It was very strange. I think the UK were kind of behind the times in terms of musicians at that point. I think at that time, I guess you were either kind of new wave of British heavy metal or punk,
Yeah.
and not a lot of bands had really reached into the thrash area. You know, there was only a very few.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because, of course, the new wave of British heavy metal band, the punk bands, later Venom and Motorhead, all those bands are from the UK. They pretty much planted the seeds for thrash metal. But like you say, there are very few thrash metal from the UK. Actually, the only band that the only thrash metal band that I know from that part of the world is Onslaught. So, is there some other thrash metal bands from the UK as well from that period?
I mean, at the time, we were really the only kind of full-on thrash band. You had kind of crossover bands like Sacrilege and things like that. And I guess really at that time, the only other UK band that kind of reached any kind of international acclaim, and they came a little bit later, was Sabat, you know. So really, no, I mean, we at that point we were the only kind of band who reached out across the world. You know, we had a massive selling album with Power from Hell in America and Brazil, obviously the UK as well. And then the Force came and it just followed on. So we were kind of lucky to have that international following, you know. Whereas I think Sabat were probably the only other band to do so, and their strength was in Europe, not so much the other side, I would have guessed. But no, there were very few bands. It was really strange.
All right. Let's talk about the album Search of Sanity. Now, I remember seeing a documentary about thrash metal band, and this heavy metal DJ from New York, I guess it was a black guy. I don't remember his name, but he's kind of famous in the scene. And he said something really interesting about this album in Search of Sanity. He said this album has the kind of riffs that Metallica never wrote. Do you agree?
Um, maybe not. I mean, Metallica were cool at the time. You know, they'd made 3 great albums, so you can't really diss Metallica in any way at that time. I mean, there's some great riffs, yeah, on the In Search of Sanity album, I think, but we kind of lost our way with the signing to a major label, you know, and they kind of had their ideas for the band instead of letting us have our own artistic license, if you like. They kind of I think they stripped the anger out of Onslaught at that time. Obviously with Steve Grimmett coming in with a much more melodic voice, and they were aiming us at the American market, you know, which I didn't totally agree with. I think we're a global band, not looking at commercial success in one market, which is what they wanted with that album, you know. But yeah, I mean, there are some great riffs and there's some great songs on that album, but it's not true Onslaught. I think when we get the chance to re-record that album with this lineup that we have now, you'll hear probably the true In Search of Sanity album in terms of sounding like a real Onslaught record, you know, because the songs are there for sure. I think it just needs that anger and aggression of the latest records to be a true Onslaught album. You know?
Yeah, In Search of Sanity sounds a bit more polished, right? The production was kind of different, but also, yeah, you change singer, you change the logo actually too.
Yeah.
And do you think that the record company took over Onslaught back then?
Oh yeah, they took over everything. I mean, they were responsible for Steve Grimmett coming into the band and Cy leaving and the sound of the record and pretty much everything. They wanted their pictures of the band, you know, they wanted their logos and they just took control and we lost everything at that time. Admittedly, they spent a lot of money on marketing, but I think it was done in the wrong way. I think if they'd have done it in the right way and let us make the record how we wanted and let them promote and sell the album, it could have been an even bigger success, you know. But they just took full control of everything, and as I say, it was a massive selling album for us, but it didn't really work in the scheme of all things Onslaught. I think it alienated some of the old school fans, gained us a lot of new fans. So it's a kind of divisive record and not my favorite Onslaught album at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Did they choose the AC/DC cover, Let There Be Rock, too?
Yeah, well, we had already done that when we were signed to Music for Nations. After we released The Force, we recorded a version of Let There Be Rock as a kind of a single, 12-inch single, to be released during the gap between albums, you know, which was fine. That was cool. The fans loved it. ACDC.
But Steve Grimmett was already in the band when you released.
No, we did that 12-inch with Cy Keeler was singing on the 12-inch version when we were signed to Music for Nations.
But I remember a video clip of that song with Steve Grimmett, right? Am I correct?
Yeah. So what happened when we signed to London Polygram? They wanted to do us a new version of Let There Be Rock, and they wanted it on the album. They wanted a video, and it's like, hey, come on, this is like a cover version we've done once already. Why are we milking this song? We really don't want this at all.
So there are two versions of that cover.
Yeah. Which I find kind of sad.
Yeah, it's kind of pointless.
Yeah, we done one and it was cool, and the second one was not cool, and it was on the album, not cool. It was like, nah. It was all down to label politics, you know, and it was.
And the problems with the record company was the reason for the breakup of Onslaught in early '90, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. I think. Like I said, they did great for us. We got a new manager in after the release of that, but Steve Grimmett left Onslaught within a year of being in the band, and that kind of made things awkward again. Along came Nirvana and shit like that, and Thrash was really struggling at the time. We didn't like the label, and I don't think. Well, we didn't sell 1 million albums in America. That was their target for In Search of Sanity, which was very ambitious for
unrealistic. Yeah.
I mean, give us some time, like look to the future and build. But they wanted immediate success, which didn't happen. We sold hundreds of thousands of albums, but not 1 million records in America, you know, which was their target. So we went our separate ways. Steve Grimmett went his separate way. We got a new vocalist in, great vocalist. Did a couple of tours. We had some interest from indie labels in the UK, but everything was kind of disappointing from there, you know. And it just felt like the time that we needed to break, you know. It wasn't fresh. It wasn't feeling good anymore. And we decided to go our separate ways.
And how was the process for the reunion back in 2005? How was the vibe?
Good, difficult. We found out, Steve Grice, the drummer, found out that the first two albums had been re-released in 2002. We didn't find this out until maybe 2004. So we contacted the label who'd released the albums.
The first three albums?
No, it was The Force and Power from Hell. They'd re-released on CD, and they'd sold amazingly well. Of course, they owed us lots of royalties, which they paid up immediately, which was great. And the company then suggested to us, what do you think of making a new Onslaught record? So it was kind of, okay. That was really not what we'd expected in the slightest, you know. I hadn't played guitar for maybe 10, 11, 12 years. Nothing at all, not picked it up. So it was a case of Steve spoke to everybody, Cy, Jim, and we couldn't find Rob Trotman. So we asked another friend of ours, and everybody said, well, yeah, let's have a look and see what happens. We'll do some rehearsals, see if it works, which is what we did. And it was tough. You can imagine, after all that time picking up a guitar and going straight into some of some of the tracks, especially stuff like off the Search of Sanity album, which was very kind of tough. So that took a few months, and I think as things started to gel, everybody started to get excited about doing it again. Rumors were out that Onslaught were kind of back together, and the show offers started to come in then, bizarrely straight away, you know? And we got offered some great shows in Europe straight away. And we said, let's do this. And for me, it was a good chance to kind of lay the ghosts of In Search of Sanity to rest and write a new album that was the album that In Search of Sanity should have been, you know? A hard, aggressive Onslaught record. And the rest is history, you know?
Yeah, the result was Kill in Peace, which is a great album. And I think with that album, you gain a whole new generation of fans, because in my case, that was the first Onslaught I ever heard, and I became a fan instantly.
Cool, man. Yeah, it was, I think it was kind of before the thrash wave had started again, 2005, 6. It was just starting to pick up again. And
the revival of thrash metal, remember? 15 years ago or more.
And it was good to be at the front end of that, you know, and lots of young fans picked up on it, and it was tough to get the material together at first, you know. It took several months and several songs that weren't right, that got thrown in the bin to find where Onslaught needed to be in 2006, you know. But I think once I'd written the actual track, Kill in Peace, that was it. Then everything fell in place. I found the formula of where we should be and what we should sound like. And the rest was a real breeze to write. It went really smoothly.
And the next album as well, The Sounds of Violence, is really, really great. So you kept on going, which was amazing. So let's talk about the present, the latest album, Generation Antichrist. Yeah. It's really fast. It's faster. It's more aggressive. It's amazing that new level of aggressiveness that Onslaught got in this new album. So where did you get the inspiration to write those songs? Because this is the first album without Andy Rose on guitars, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we just come back when we started writing Generation Antichrist. We just come back off the road for 2 years of playing the Force album, because it was the 30th anniversary of the Force in 2016. So we went and done the anniversary tour for that, which lasted almost 2 years, you know. We did lots and lots of touring just playing that album, yeah. So when we came back, we discussed the kind of direction for the new album, Generation Antichrist. And we decided we should go back, kind of look at the early influences for the band and look at the good things about the Force, what we did in the way we put things together, you know? And having played the Force for 2 years, we were kind of really locked into that mode. So we kind of went back to the Motorhead Discharge vibe, the Force vibe, and looking at the songs on there and how we created those. And that's what we did with Generation Antichrist. You know, it's a kind of retro thing for Onslaught, but all at the same time, it's very moving forward. We wanted to make the most aggressive record we could, but it was based on the early days of Onslaught, and I think we captured that really well. And with the production that Daniel Bergstrand gave us, really aggressive. We asked him for the most aggressive sound that he could give us. We wanted it to be super brutal, and it worked, and it just came together amazingly well.
Yeah, what I like about the latest albums by Onslaught is that it still sounds very old school, really thrashy, but the production is really on point. It sounds current, it sounds modern, it sounds really, really good. So congratulations for that, man, because some bands, sadly, they try to be too much old school. They try to sound like a old band on purpose. And with all the technology advances, to do that, it's kind of silly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, our influences right now are still Discharge and Motorhead. So that's where my heart lies in music, is back then. So anything I ever write is going to be kind of old school, if you like, but we obviously attach modern vibes to everything, you know, the sound in particular. I think you have to create a nice balance between the two, because there's the new generation fans who expect things this way, and the old generation of fans who expect things that way, you know. So if we can get the balance right, it works really well. And I feel we did that on this new album. Everybody seemed happy with it. Old school fans loved it. New generation fans loved it. And we got a whole bunch of new fans as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those songs were written with Cy on mind as a singer, right? But then
Yeah.
he left the band. Why did Cy leave Onslaught?
I think because of the touring we did between, I think after the sixth album, we toured pretty much for 4 years. And it can be tough if you're
Yeah.
not in the right frame of mind to do that, or you're not in a position. It's difficult. Cy didn't enjoy it to the end of it. Cy didn't enjoy the touring. You know, he found it very tough. Whereas the rest of us really enjoyed the experience. Cy was finding it very hard. So I guess he kind of looked at when we were going to make a new album, the touring cycle was going to start again, and it was going to be heavy touring. Obviously, we didn't realize about the pandemic and stuff at the time, but
Yeah.
we kind of came to a mutual decision that Cy was going to no longer be part of the band. You know, he just couldn't commit to the touring side of things, and we felt there was no point in putting out a great new album and then having to get a replacement singer to come and sing those songs that Cy had recorded. So it was best to make the break before we made the record. So the album comes out with a new singer, and that guy goes then on tour to sing his songs, you know, and that's what we did. Obviously, the decision to replace Cy was tough because he's a very well-respected singer. The fans love him, and it still had to sound like Onslaught, you know. But we were lucky in the fact that Dave Garnet, who's the now singer, is a massive Onslaught fan, and he fitted in like a glove, you know. He's got a similar sound to Cy, but his own identity, you know. And when he sings the old stuff, which is very important, that he carries off the music from Kill in Peace and the Force album, it's got to sound right, you know. And he has absolutely nailed it. So we were very fortunate that we found such a singer who could cover all those bases, you know, and make the new album sound great as well.
Yeah, this new singer, Dave Garnet, like you say, sounds very similar to Cy Keeler. Was it like a conscious decision to get a guy who can sing like Cy?
Yeah, I mean, it had to be close. I mean, to go, I mean, we've experienced what happened with Steve Grimmett when you find a singer that's so
Different.
different, it didn't work. I mean, when Steve Grimmett sang stuff from the Force, it really didn't work. And I think that's what kind of turned the old fans against him. So we needed to get somebody who was going to sound right on the old material, you know? And Dave being such a big fan, and we've known him for a long time anyway. When he came in, he did a stand-in show for Cy couldn't do beginning of last year, and he was amazing. The old school fans in Sweden really loved what he did, and that was kind of the signal for us that Dave was going to work, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did a festival in Sweden, right? Before joining the band.
Yeah, House of Metal, and he did an amazing job. So when we got back, we kind of spoke with Cy, and we came to the decision that we were both going to go our different ways. And then obviously Dave was the guy to go to straight away, you know, which we did. We got him to demo some of the tracks off of Generation Antichrist, and he did a great job on those, just producing himself, you know. So once we'd agreed to give him the job in the band, we got an old friend of ours called Pete Hinten, who I think he produced the first two Saxon albums, Denim and Leather, Wheels of Steel, I think. And he's an old friend of mine, and he's a good producer, you know. So we got him in with Dave, because Pete used to manage Onslaught back in the day, and a very good friend, so he knows the band inside out. He knew exactly what we needed and what was going to be needed to move the band forward. So he worked very closely with Dave, producing the vocals on Generation Antichrist, and did an amazing job. He got some excellent performances out of him and really pulled it together, you know. And I got to say, a lot of people are really loving his vocals on that record.
Nige, you are the last man standing in Onslaught, like they say. You're the only founder member of the band, and there were a lot of lineup changes during the history of Onslaught. Actually, four singers and four guitar players, four bassists maybe.
Yeah.
So my question is, why is so difficult to keep a steady lineup for Onslaught?
Well, it's bizarre, and I guess if when I tell you this now, you go, yeah, maybe you're right. You look at many thrash bands, exactly the same position as Onslaught, Testament, Exodus, Annihilator. how many musicians have these bands had? You know, Onslaught the same. It's bizarre.
Overkill maybe too.
Yeah, it's a weird phenomenon in thrash metal. Why we go through many lineup changes, I really don't know. The only thing that I can kind of put my finger on is that all those bands tour so much, and as we mentioned earlier, if you're not cut out for touring, it's tough. You either love it or you hate it, you know. And I can only imagine that's the only thing I can put my finger on. It goes down to touring. There's so much touring. I mean, we lost guitarist before Wayne come in on this album. Ian, he found touring very tough, and again, that was his reason for departing. And as was Steve Grice before, they just couldn't keep up with the level of the touring that was required for this band, you know. So that's why, I guess. But every time a lineup change happens, we try to use it as a positive energy, you know. We try to find an even better musician, you know, or a better songwriter. And so far, fingers crossed, it seems to have worked, you know. We've had some great musicians in the band, and this lineup is amazing.
Yeah.
I think the potential.
All the lineups are great. that's crazy.
yeah, we've been very lucky. We have been very lucky. But we always use it to our advantage. And I think at the moment, if we can keep this lineup together, I think this will be the first Onslaught lineup to make 2 albums back to back, which has never happened really. I mean, I guess you can count Power from Hell and the Force, because that was the same 4 guys and added Cyan. But this one, Generation Antichrist, and the next album, I think will be the first 2 albums back to back with the same musicians on the same roles, you know.
Yeah, whole lineup, you mean?
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
So you are actually already working on the next studio album.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some downtime, so we can't tour at the moment. So let's try and get ahead with new music and stuff. So we're working on things at the moment.
So are you still on the pre-production stage, or?
Oh yeah, it's still very early. I mean, we've got the album title, all the song titles. We've got banks of riffs ready to go and stuff like that. But nothing's actually been physically put together in whole songs. We're just pooling all the ideas from everybody at the moment, putting the pieces together.
And you already got some dates for this year, right? So the touring cycle for Onslaught starts this year 2021.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, last year we had to cancel 4 tours and countless festivals because of the pandemic, obviously, which was a blow to supporting the album. All the festivals have been rescheduled for this summer. Whether they will remain, I don't know. It's not looking great at the moment, especially in mainland Europe. The pandemic seems to be kicking off again. Yeah. So we're now booking shows for 22, which I really hope is going to happen. We're looking at coming back to South America, obviously the European tours, and the US as well, and Canada. So it's got to be gone by then. It can't carry on much longer. It's crazy. But yeah, we're planning ahead. But then we've got to try and get the next record going as well. We don't want a big gap between 2 albums again. So it's trying to strike the balance between touring and writing new music for the next year now.
All right. So that's it for today, Nige. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you want to add?
I'd just like to say thank you to all our fans in your country. It's been a while since we've been there now, and I can't wait to return. I love playing in your country. It's so amazing. We had such great times, you know. So I just look forward to coming back, and everybody, please stay safe, and we hope to see you all very soon.